Hi, welcome to the Brief Book Reviews channel, otherwise known as An Old Guy Reviews the book that he's read this week. So what's the old guy read this week? Well, the book I've read this week is this one. It's called The Weekend by author T.M.Logan. Was published as a hardback here in the United Kingdom on the 26th of February 2026 by Zafra, which is an imprint at Bonnier Books. The author's 10th book. I've read a couple of his previous efforts and really enjoyed them. So what's this one all about, I hear you say? Well, bit of a clue on the front. 6 friends, 5 secrets, 1 holiday to die for. And a picture of a remote country cottage. So this is the tale of 6 friends. They're called there's Helen and her husband Jason, Helen's brother Christian and his wife Miranda, and Helen's best mate Kat and her husband Deb. And the 6 of them is their annual thing. They go to somewhere to have a break for New Year's, and this year they're in a cottage that they've rented in the Yorkshire Dales. So they're out hiking one day. It's just before, well, it's New Year's Eve. They're out hiking when all of a sudden a storm comes in and they need to take cover. Helen isn't particularly pleased with Jason, her husband, because he's leading them and quite clearly he's lost and doesn't want to admit it. Her brother Christian lends a hand and clearly he's lost as well. So there's a big storm coming in and they think, well, we better take cover, let it blow over. So they're on they're off piste, so to speak. They find a track and they end up in an old, what appears to be an old lead mine, a cave. But at least it's dry, so they pop in there. They all find a rock or a crevice to sit on. When Helen sits down and thinks, I'll have a drink of water, gets a water bottle out, and accidentally, because it's dark in there, knocks it. And it drops down a gap between the rocks in the cave. And she thinks, so puts her hand down, starts pulling it out, and all of a sudden can't find a water bottle, but suddenly finds something plasticky. Hang on, I say, better check to see what this is. This could be, somebody could have lost something. So pulls it out. It turns out it's a backpack, and it's quite a big backpack. It's not a mini backpack that they've got, and it's quite heavy. So tells the rest of them, and they're all looking around and saying, "Well, what's in it?" So opens a zip, and there's a receipt for the actual backpack. The purchase of the backpack. Opens up the backpack, and the book describes that Helen sees more money than she's ever seen in her life. And I think, what on earth's going on here? So eventually the storm abates, and they say, well, let's get back to the cottage. We'll take this backpack back to the cottage. There's no cell service from here. There's no mobile coverage. The nearest police station is like 20 miles away. Tomorrow we'll take it to the police and hand it in. That's the best thing to do. So they agree on that. Get back to the cottage. It's New Year's Eve. They're playing their usual game of their own version of Texas Hold'em. And instead of using the cheap plastic poker chips they normally do, they decide to use the money in the backpack. So they're merrily playing their game of Texas Hold'em. And it soon appears that there's a bit of a division between the 6 friends. There are some that are saying, well, we must take this to the police. Clearly, this is probably some dodgy money from some criminal enterprise. The others are saying, well, if it's been hidden in a cave out of the way, who's going to know? Perhaps we should think about keeping it. And they eventually come to a decision by having a secret ballot where they're split 50-50, and they decide, we need to find out a bit more about this. We need to, Google, find out if there's been any recent robberies, anything in the news about, what's missing. They counted the money, and as I said, it's £1.6 million in 50s and 20s. So it's a lot of money, split 6 ways. It's 275 grand each. So this is clearly playing on some of the people's minds more than the others, and that essentially is the tale. Should you keep it or should you hand it in? What would you do? What would you do if you suddenly had 1.6 million quid in cash? It's a tricky one, and the 6 central characters are all sort of thinking, well, that would solve a few problems in my life. Some greater problems than others. And that, in essence, is the tale. So they eventually get back home and they decide to keep the money. And that's when the fun starts, because obviously 1.6 million quid going missing, somebody's that's somebody's money and they're going to want to know about it. So the tale unfolds and we see that all the 6 characters are well, some have bigger secrets than others, and they're all keeping secrets. And we see a hideous web of deceit, of treachery, and the damage that this vast amount of money can do. And clearly, as I said, there are, apart from the 6 people, and their arguments with each other about should they keep it or should they hand it in, they go down a road where the steps, some of that money's already been spent because somebody's taken small amounts of it, and away they go. They get it checked to make sure one of the cat works in a shop. So they check it under UV light to make sure it's genuine, and it is. And that, in essence, is a sale. Lots of treachery, lots of deceit, lots of secrets, and it shows the problem that money can give. And there's quite a nice little quote on the inside of the book here by Henry Ford, if I can find it. And this is after all me talking about. Hold on. Right, got there in the end. It's a quote by Henry Ford, and it says, "Money doesn't change men, it merely unmasks them." So we see their true characters coming out. The money's just made it worse. So really enjoyable read. The actual story is only 395 pages. And there's a comment on the front that says, "A fiendishly gripping, what would I do thriller." And I think we could all think of that, because you just imagine rocking up to your nearest bank branch with 1.6 million quid in cash. It's not going to end well, is it? So, good read, really enjoyed it. Fast paced, you relate to the characters. Slightly improbable end, I guess, but nevertheless, I enjoyed it. Well worth a read. So I think that's it for this week's brief book review. 10/10 till we do it again. Bye.